Vince Dodge, who's part of Mālama Mākua, was doing point pounders. I wanted to learn how to do it too, and for him it was rock on rock, doing this. And then I selected a puaku, which was a small one, about half the size, and started using a hammerstone and started doing it. And my question to him was, okay, how long is this going to take? How many whacks is it going to take? Is it going to take a day, a week, a month? And he kind of chuckled, because it wasn't about time. It was about putting that mana into it, getting it out. So these two represent our beginning, but also the story about Mālama Mākua and Mākua, not knowing what the end result's going to be, not knowing how long it's going to take. And it wasn't about that. It was about the process. Every whack made a difference. And right now I have a lot of tiny little grains of stone on my clothes from each of these. And each one of those become part of the foundation for all the efforts that we made in the past. Keep building on it.
I'm witnessing mine and there's nothing I can do about it. She's just gone, just like that. Oh. Oh.
Well, Mākua Valley is one place that the military took from the community, from Hawaiian families in 1941, soon after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And not only did that displace that community from their livelihood, from the places that had cultural meaning to them, because of the military activities, the native forest has burned maybe over 200 times over the years. And they've littered that valley with unexploded ordnance, everything from 1,000-pound bombs to cluster bombs that have rendered parts of that valley inaccessible because of the risk.
We gotta stop this. This has to stop. We can't go for generations and generations with the same thing occurring. We gotta help her. We gotta stop the bombing. We gotta stop the fires. We gotta stop it all.
With Mālama Mākua, we were able to get access, agreement through court.
There was a lawsuit that we actually we won. We asked if we could have 2 accesses a month, plus makahiki and overnight, opening and closing.
And it was very contentious at the beginning, but we started doing community access. So you get a chance to experience and imagine what it was like 1,000 years ago. What sounds would you hear? What would you smell? What activity would be here? What were the people doing?
Mākua is a safe haven, ironically so, obviously, because Mākua has not been made safe. Like pretty much everybody that I know has gone there to seek safety and comfort and to be held in the worst of times.
Mākua is definitely a healing place. I mean, it's her own mana for sure, but I think that the way that we hold cultural access, we have been able to create a safe environment for people to have their own experience in Mākua.
After the lawsuit, the Army had to do an EIS, and if they didn't finish the EIS, they couldn't train. They still haven't finished the EIS, so that is where it's at. It's been 20 years, no live fire in Mākua.
The military's leases of these Hawaiian trust lands, they are leased for a term of 65 years and they expire in 2029. And so I think right now, what's important for the community to understand is that we have a rare opportunity to begin working towards the return and restoration of lands.
Mālama Mākua, we're right there, we're in it, and we're gonna help that change happen because that's part of our Pico of Peace model. Peace is not passive. It's not something that's just like over there we go reach in and get some. Peace is something we gotta promote, and that promotion means that we gotta take action. So we gotta mobilize, organize. We have a plan and we're gonna move on it. You guys are welcome to come.
My sense is the Valley is calling us out to stand for justice and to really work for peace. That's the energy that's gonna carry us forward. You know, as we get these projects of restoration up and off the ground, the future for Mākua, I think, is going to get brighter and brighter. And then that all ties into the future of our community, the future of our archipelago, of the Hawaiian nation, and ultimately of the world.
With Mākua, it's not going to end when the lease is in. When we get it back, it's going to take 7 generations to clean up. This is a sandstone, and what would be done is that it would be using water to polish. I never got to that point. So how many whacks? I don't know. And how long to get Mākua back? Not important. It's one hammerstone hit at a time and one slow polish at a time.
So while we were talking back there, and I got to know Sparky and Mikey a little bit, Sparky told me, ask the hard questions. I'm going to ask him a hard question. I want to start at Mākua Beach. What was it like for you going there, right? I mean, I think Leandra said it best, life shattered. So maybe share with us what was like, what you are going through. Because, you know, there's such a negative outlook that we look, oh, you're homeless or houseless, as you said. That plays a role, right, in how you meet the future. And, I mean, it's amazing how we got here.
Okay.
Okay, if you can take us back to that.
Good question. Mākua has 2 ahupua'a. Mākua is on one side, and the other side is Kahanahaiki. And where Leandra and I was spending most of our time at the beginning was Kahanahaiki. And it's a ahupua'a for self-reflection and transition and personal growth. So during that time, we were separated. She moved to the beach and became part of that houseless community. So we used Mākua or Kahanahaiki as a way to heal our relationship. The ʻāina was healing her. She was making that connection, getting away from the urban dictates of how we're supposed to live, go to work, get a job, pay the rent or the mortgage, have insurance, all of these gotta do. And when you have kids, now you gotta get up, you gotta feed the kids, you gotta wash the clothes. And that becomes my observation of spiritual anchor that really distracts from connection. So being at Kahanahaiki was a place she was able to reconnect. And because of that, I was able to reconnect. And the goal was to work on healing us. Kahanahaiki is a challenging place. Everybody that goes there, there's drama. More personal, more internal. In fact, all the fights in Mākua, normally on that side of the bay. Or, you want to get your car broken into, you park that side. Mākua was a nurturing side. So once we got past the personal grinding gears, Mākua was a nurturing side that we started making the change.
So, Sparky, the hard question is, how did you get past that? Right? The emotional trauma that if you face when you live on the beach. It's not easy life. It's kind of hard life.
Yeah.
People, there's a stigma to it. People look down on, oh, you don't have a home, right? Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that and still push forward?
We realized that the community projects their impression. And I started noticing, because the networks are coming down with the reporters, and they used all of these negative words that has a specific connotation that, if we let it, impacts us spiritually, emotionally, that affects us in how we treat everybody else. Homeless is one of those words. Houseless is a different word, but because they use homeless, there's this connotation, or even welfare, or you're getting subsidies, or you're not working because you're trying to protect what little you have to support yourself. And all you have is a tent. That's all you have. And with the rains that we just had, being homeless or being houseless in a tent, the tent leaks. It rains inside the tent. Everything gets wet. And when the wind blows hard, everything lays down. So being houseless is not a fair weather, it's a fair weather kind of condition. But most people treat it really negative, and it's hard. When I watch this, there's a remembering and a lot of pain. The houseless part of it, some of the videos that I took back then, I always wanted to go back and create a video about the process of the evictions and the Mākua Council and all the things that we did during that time. I still cannot watch it. There's still too much emotion that goes along with that.
Yeah, I mean, if anything stood out to me as I watched that film is, how did you do that, right? I mean, most times we try to do the difficult things in our life when everything's going the best we can, but that was not your guys' case, right? And so that is just amazing that you were able to do that. Maybe we can ask Vince now, since we got you. He's in Japan right now, so he's joining us. And Vince, the question that I kind of had for you is, I kind of looked up your guys' website, right, and found out that Vince was born in Japan, Japanese mother, Hungarian Jewish father, right?
Yep.
And what intrigued me was that thing that you said, that when he saw first glance at the valley, deja vu. I had been here before. Can you explain that a little bit more? And maybe explaining that, maybe tell how you got involved too. Yeah.
Would love to do that. And just want to aloha kako, everybody. Yeah, so it's wonderful to be able to zoom in from Ichinose, Shimoda, Japan. Came down here with two my mopunas to help my good friend Hideki Kimukai on his natural farm. And we're working in the little rice paddy this morning. And later today we get to plant rice in a Shinto ceremony at one of the other places that he helps out with. So it's lovely to see you folks and to connect back to Hawaii and back to Mākua. Yeah, so my mom and dad met in Japan. My mom's born and raised in Nagano. My dad is born and raised in New Jersey. He's the youngest of 4 siblings and the only one to be born in the States. The family was Jewish or is Jewish Hungarian, and they fled, the Austria-Hungary region after World War I, and saw what was happening in Europe and in Italy with Mussolini, and then immigrated to the United States in 1930. So my dad was in the service. My dad said that he was, pretty much rah America, and met my mom. They married, they had me, and then I spent 2 months in Japan after birth, and then they moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He went to medical school. He was a medic in the Army. And the plane stopped in Hickam Air Force Base, the flight over from Japan to the continent. Now, my dad, in reflection, my dad's best friend in the Army was this Chinese brother, Danny Yi. And we actually, we'll bring him back into the story. And then my dad marries a Japanese woman, and I realized, my dad was open to people that were different from him. They landed, the plane stopped in Hawaii at Hickam. And because I asked my dad, why did we come to Hawaii? Because, he had never been to Hawaii before then. And he said, well, they got off the plane, he and my mom, and they were on the tarmac and they could see Diamond Head and the sun was rising. And he turned to her and said, this feels like home. And she she agreed. And so they decided right then and there that when he was done with medical school, they would move back to Hawaii. So they did that in 1961, in June of 1961, just after completing medical school and just after my youngest sister was 2 weeks old. They put us all on a plane. I was 4, going on 5, and I remember the plane. It had propellers, gang. It had propellers, and it was like cold and noisy in there. And we landed, and we stayed at the house of the Yees, Daddy Yee and his wife, Auntie Amy, for a while. And that was our start in Hawaii. So then, fast forward a couple decades. And now my dad, doctor, working at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center. And, he was interested in Mākua for a long time. And I remember my dad, he got dementia eventually. And so I had a chance to ask him, why Mākua? And he explained that he did his residency at the old St. Francis Hospital in Pu'unui, Liliha. And he said during the first year of residency, there was like a staff outing, and they went out to Mākua, to the beach at Mākua, to the north end. In fact, where Sparky is talking about, that there's a little section of beach there that's called the Hale Mohalo Beach, because the Hansen's disease patients from Hale Mohalo used to go to the beach there. And Waianae was so remote in the early 60s that, these Hansen's disease leprosy patients, they were all deformed, yeah? And so, but they were able to go to the beach there because nobody was around. Anyway, he said the first moment he looked into Mākua Valley, for him was deja vu. He had been there before. And from that moment, he said, Mākua, every time he saw Mākua, his interest was perked, and he collected all kinds of like clippings, newspaper articles, photographs, from the 60s. So that's kind of his story. Now, in 1968 or so, my dad, we were Catholics. My dad in the church, Wesley Church on University Ave, he got educated about what was really happening about the Vietnam War. And he did a 180, from kind of a red-blooded American patriot. He became a very passionate anti-Vietnam War activist. And my young teenage years and my siblings were spent, I swear, every other weekend we were at some protest in front of some military base, So that was just kind of in our DNA, because that was just business as usual. We had folks that were trying to get out of the army. AWOL soldiers stay at our house back in the day. We had to keep it secret and whatnot. And, politically quite active. And then he begins to work out at Waianae Comprehensive Health Center in the mid 70s. I move out in 79 there and continue my family. And then, I was a fisherman in the 80s in Waianae, small time, Opelo Akule at night. And I can remember fishing outside of Mākua Valley at night and actually watching the valley burn as the result of the helicopter tracer training that they did, where they, the tracers set the trees on fire. And at night, it's pretty spectacular. It's like watching the volcano. Fire is fascinating. But then as dawn came, we would be greeted by this smoky, blackened valley. And then as the trade wind picked up, the ash from the fire would begin to blow out to sea and land on our little boats, And I can remember feeling that, like that eha, like in my chest, like, oh, this is painful, yeah. And then I say, it was really gradual. I've heard Sparky say over the years that, he is a reluctant Mālama Mākua member. And I felt that way for a while. I joined Mālama Mākua in 1998, just before the lawsuit was filed. And, I've been active. I've been helping my dad host cultural access. As you saw in the documentary, my dad and Leandra, they held down cultural access for about the first 15 years until Leandra got sick. And then eventually my dad just physically couldn't do it. And, very subtly, that baton got handed over to me. And I find, myself a few years ago, kind of being like really holding down the position of organizing the access, communicating with the Army, and hosting probably a majority of the accesses at this point. And, I would say in the past that it wasn't like, oh, I gotta go to Mākua, there's a cultural access, like I'd have my own life, I was busy, but my dad would say, hey, I'm busy, I can't make this access, can you cover for me? I'd be like, sure, Pops, and I would cover. And that was kind of, my participation in cultural access in the Valley. And again, as my dad was not able to, it kind of naturally stepped in. And then I found that Mākua is like one of the most responsive ʻāinas I have ever been on. I mean, she is amazing. And every access is truly an amazing experience, even though I'm there sometimes twice a month, for months on end. And as my brother Nathan, who until he moved to Kauai was kind of, we were kind of a team, especially with our school groups. At the end of an access, when everybody left, we would talk about like, wow, did you see the way she responded to when they did their oli or when they did that? And we're like, that was really incredible, I don't think it gets better than that. And then the next group would come the next week, or 2 weeks, and it would be just as amazing. So Mākua really captured me ultimately. And I look forward to every time that I'm in the Valley, especially with folks that have been called. I say often at an access that is very special for me because, people are busy and have other lives and whatnot. And so to put aside the time to show up in Mākua is really about answering the call of Mākua. And it is a most wonderful thing for me to be with people that have answered the call of our beloved ʻāina. I'll leave it at that.
Before we go on, I just want to explain the format. So I'm going to have some question and answers for them. And after I have Mickey answer his hard question, it's going to be kind of open. If you have questions for them, just come up to the mic, okay? And then you can ask your questions. So in the meantime, Mickey, so I did a little researching on Mickey, and what I found interesting is that he considered himself a garden variety liberal. Yeah.
No, I hope not.
Well, until you're awakening. Until you're awakening, right?
Yeah.
And then you change into a pro-sovereignty Hawaiian
Communist. Yeah.
Explain.
Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, what a great question. And yeah, you did your research. That was like from one like Christian Science Monitor interview or something, right? So I started to get kind of radicalized around like the last major financial crisis. And I was a garden variety liberal until I started to realize that the system wasn't broken. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that the system was operating, it was performing its design function. It was operating exactly as it was designed to, which is to say capitalism was doing its thing, right? And so that's kind of like how I started to kind of get into community organizing, because if you're a communist, you don't just like hold reading groups, although a lot of them only do that. You want to try to actively change the conditions in your community to start to get ready for an actual revolution. And that's actually, it took me all of that to kind of like even start to really interrogate the actual history of Hawaii, the place where I was born and raised, and where all of that was just kind of like literally right behind the fence, right? On the other side of the fence. And so, I first started to get involved. I was a filmmaker first, and then got into organizing after that. But it wasn't until on the Mauna, we had managed to raise enough funds, like a karaoke fundraiser, that we raised a bunch of money to support like a delegation. And I went with them in the early days, some of the first dozen people, to kind of hold the line there with the kupuna. And the day July 2019, right? The day the kupuna took a rest, I was filming it, getting all the footage from my friends, and then I was in the Hunter station before it became eventually the media center. I remember my teeth were like literally chattering because it was so cold, but I was like clacking away on the laptop because I was like, this video needs to be out into the world tomorrow or it's not going to matter, right? So, we pushed it out, and that video, it moved so many people around the world, and there was like an inbuilt network of organizing that went all the way back to solidarity. It was Standing Rock, right? That pushed it out to the entire world, and that's how hundreds of thousands of dollars were raised for the Pu'uhonua and the bail fund and all that. And that's when I like really started to realize like, oh, there's actual power, like real power. Like Sparky said, it's my weapon of choice too, And so that's how kind of my filmmaking work was completely started to be integrated into my organizing work. And then, was it 2019? I don't want to say, what was it, 2021, November of 2021, Red Hill happens, right? The first major catastrophic leak where, 19,000 gallons of a jet fuel water mixture contaminates 93,000 homes, thousands of people get sick. Military families, but civilian and Native Hawaiian families as well, because there were a lot of people in Kapilina Beach homes, Ewa side of Pu'uloa, whose homes, even though they were civilian homes, were built on Navy water lines. So started to organize. A lot of us started to organize those folks. And in my filming and in my organizing, you got to do house visits, and you would see just you would be meeting people on the worst day of their lives, and they'd show you like their own rashes, pictures of their kids, terrible rashes and getting sick, and we were some of the first people to show up for them, and then Dr. Kalehua Crook put out the word, to be like, we feel for you, come join us, learn more about what your boss is, what your US military has done to Hawaii, because that's why we feel for you, because we're going through it. And so it started to create an opportunity to move people and to reach across this like seemingly unbridgeable divide between occupied Native Hawaiians and old ʻāina organizers and US military, some active duty US military. And so that was when I first started to get introduced to Mākua. I had always wanted to go ever since I found out, about Mākua. And I met, I think maybe Auntie Lynette at like a Lohoihoi'ea or something. And so I got her number. And then once I felt like there was like a good amount of like people that I had organized in these communities that were like starting to like really kind of like really become very critical of not just what was done to their families, but like to the entire US military project in Hawaii. So I asked Auntie Lynette, I feel like there's some folks who I've been organizing who might be ready to hear some of the lessons that Mākua might have to teach them. So like, can we come on and access to do that? And she just texted back, yeah. And so the next week, we brought over some families, and it was some of the most amazing experiences I've witnessed, like where, these are military families where they would be crying in the introductions, not the debrief, because the moment you get in that valley, like them in particular, they see this beautiful valley that has been hurt and violated by the same people who hurt and violated their families. And for a lot of them, it happened to be their superior officers, right? And so almost immediately, not in all of them, but in a lot of them, you saw a sea change where like several of them would post after that, like, because they would learn from like Uncle Sparky folks, like about the leases, the 2029 leases, about US occupation. And they would post to all of their followers. Some of them had big followings too. Like I learned so much here, there was so much I didn't know, and we need to demilitarize and deoccupy Hawaii. Like it was in the span of a day, once that door was blown open. And they stayed that way. We're still in touch with a lot of them, and they continue to share that message. And so that's why I say, like, Mākua And ʻāina is like, it's the best teacher, it's the best caretaker, and it's also the best organizer, because there's nothing, you can give people a bunch of reading assignments and you can give them all the right arguments, arm them with all the right information, but if you don't pull that out of abstraction, if you don't like ho'i to the lo'i, right? Like if you don't actually get in ʻāina, it's hard to really grasp the stakes and why it's so important to actually fully invest yourself into protecting it and fighting for it.
Thank you. This is for all of you, especially Sparky and Vince, maybe. So they have a website, MālamaMākua.org. Well done, website. But when I read on it, it seems like the military is changing their minds, that they're going to end. They're going to go for renewal of their leases. Can you update us on that? And
this is my imaginings. The military, based on history, I don't trust them. And every promise they made, they broke. So even in the lease, they would clean it up and return it into the pre-use condition. That will never happen. So in our discussions with the design of the Mākua University was around Leandro's idea of coming up with a learning situation that would end up providing excellence in UXO removal. So within that discussion also, what about the restoration? What about the planting, getting the natives back, creating all the environment? But right now we can't dig because there's so much unexploded ordnance in there. They've been using Mākua since the late 1920s. When the lease ends, it will be 100 years. Now the lease is only 65 years. It started 5 years after statehood. But before that, all the land was taken during World War II under martial law. So they owned every square inch. And then after with statehood, they had to resolve all the land ownership and occupation. That's when they basically took a lot of the land that they occupy. So every area, it's not only Mākua that has a lease. Big Island, PMRF, the Pacific Missile Tracking, is a dollar lease. And there's a whole bunch of others. Puakaloa is another one. But if you were able to check all of the different military land occupations, it's not only the land they occupy. In Kaena, they have the golf balls, the radar, and it's 1 or 2 acres that they actually lease, but they control 70-something thousand acres. So in one of the maps, it shows Mākua, and on the other side, it's Walua. All of that land to Kaena is all controlled by the military. So they show that they own a postage stamp, but they control the whole area. And
Okay, if I can jump in there, Sparky.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so what the military has said publicly is that they will let the lease for Mākua Valley lapse. Now, we're not talking about the whole valley. The state lease is 782 acres. So they said that they will let that lapse. In the meantime, they had approached the Board of Land and Natural Resources and suggested a land swap take place, that they swap land that they lease for land that they own, which I think Sparky or Uncle William Ila have said, oh, you wanna take the land you stole from my grandmother and swap it with land you stole from somebody else's grandmother. That's not gonna go over here at all. And so it's important, I think, for people to, well, also the Army said on TV, Channel 4 News Now, that they would, of course, clean up the 782 acres before they turn it back. But if you read the actual lease document, which is only a couple pages long, it basically gives the Army and the state an out. They are not required to clean up their mess. If the cost of cleanup exceeds the value, the assessed appraised value of the land, they can write the state a check for that appraised value and walk away. Now, we are not going to let them get away with that. You know, we are going to hold their feet to the fire. And we also are very determined to get the whole valley back. They have not fired a single live round in Mākua since the summer of 2004. So it's been we're approaching 22 years now. So the Army has already said 2.5 years ago, that they would no longer need Mākua Valley now or in the future for live fire training. So basically, Mākua Valley is on its way back. And that for us is the whole valley. The least portion is the kind of front fifth of the valley. And you know, as this process, the EIS process that the Army has done, has gone forward, and community discussions and the governors, you know, kind of plan, and they're sort of kind of trying to do a backdoor deal with the Department of Defense, and so on and so forth. It's just become clearer and clearer to us that a few things are absolutely necessary. One is that the reality is, for the unexploded ordnance cleanup, or UXO cleanup, it has come to our attention that this has become a multi-million-dollar pork barrel for the corporate entities that are involved in this cleanup work, and that they are not dedicated to the cleanup of ʻāina. They are dedicated to making money. We came to our attention that their profit margin on these contracts with the Department of Defense are 40 to 60% profit of the contract, which is, you know, that's huge, right? So we decided that we need to run the cleanup. We will hire the expertise necessary, but as a community nonprofit, we need to run the cleanup. The Department of Defense needs to put up the money. That money is likely best gone into an endowment fund, where that we can use the interest generated to begin the restoration of the valley. And that restoration would be very different from how business as usual UXO removal happens. It would, our style would be, you know, 1 acre at a time, that you use animals to clear the ground so you can see the ground, and then you do your work of finding the unexploded bombs, and then you replant, and then you move. And this will pick up momentum as we train members of our community to do this work. We foresee that the training school for the UX removal will happen in Mākua Valley, that the greenhouses for the plants for the restoration of the ʻāina will be in Mākua Valley. And actually, I think, you know, and I don't know if everybody shares this with me, but my manawa is that also there will be dwellings. There will be housing for folks that are working in the valley, This kind of work, ʻāina restoration work, one of the most critical pieces of it is observing your environment, getting to know your ʻāina again. And because of the fence, and because nobody lives down there, we need to regain that practice. And, you know, what better way than living in the valley? So for you young folks, you know, thinking about work, especially if you're from the Leeward side and you understand, you know, how lovely the traffic is every morning and every evening, imagine being able to work in Mākua, to be of service to your community and the ʻāina, having the fulfillment of restoration and rebuilding a place that, you know, your children can be part of in the future.
Okay, I have a cautionary tale to extend on what Vince is talking about. Kaho'olawe spent $400 million. All they talked about is the ground. No mention about cleaning up the ocean. And within all of the military's spending, like Vince said, they're into making profit. They're not into cleaning it up. We need to keep their feet to the fire. It's going to be up to us, all of us, to make sure that they stay present. Leandra and I went to Vieques, which is in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico has a Navy base as big, if not bigger, than Pearl Harbor, called Roosevelt Roads. Roosevelt Roads would use Vieques as their live fire training area. And it's about the same size and dimension as the entire Waianae coast, from Kapolei to Ka'ena, and about as wide. And a third of their island was used for live fire training, just like Mākua. They ended up killing, dropping a bomb from a jet onto the guard who was a resident of the island. And that's what started the whole community to go and starting to protest their presence. Now, I had a chance to present to Navy commanders and stuff. Turns out, second in command for Roosevelt Roads was in the audience. She did not like what I had to say because they left all the contamination, high levels of cancer within the community. And during that time, I was blessed to be part of what was, at the time, the Military Toxic Project. So I had a chance to go to different communities of Native Americans, Black communities, Hispanic communities, all impacted by military, and find out that across the nation, not only across the nation, but across the world, that the military has negative impact all the communities and basically sold us an idea of patriotism and loyalty that if we don't defend them, we become the enemy. Where we're actually, like Fred said, there's too many symptoms to identify how they've affected us. I live in Waianae, Lu'ulu'ule. This week, they're having an controlled burn in Schofield. I'm downwind of all of that ash. And this has been going on for generations. We've asked the Department of Health, will you do a health study? And he said, no, why would we do that? Will you do air quality when they're doing these kinds of, no, it would be insignificant. So we can't get the state, we can't get the military to really care for our community. So it's going to be up to all of us to stand and make sure that they do the right thing. And will they want to do it? My imaginings is no. They might want to, but they won't get the budget, they won't get the money, and they won't get the authority to make any meaningful effort.
So one question that I have, or maybe a comment, I mean, we have a lot of, I guess, experience of fighting money, big money, right? And that's what you're going to be up against. It's going to take a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people to go against money.
Yeah. It takes a lot of people, but not as much as you think. I'll give you one example, one completely hypothetical example. So you know how RIMPAC is every 2 years, and this is a RIMPAC year, happens in the summer. There is a day where all the ships have to be loaded up with supplies, with personnel, and there's just one big, wide road, one-way road that goes in to Joint Base Pearl Harbor. It's like maybe like, I don't know, 10 to 14 lanes. It's very wide, but it's one way. Doesn't take a whole lot of people to block it. And you look at Waikiki, right? That is the heart of capital accumulation in Honolulu, right? There's only like 2 ways in and out of that place, right? And then you can cut off that vital artery of capital. And look how quickly all of these, unaccountable legislators suddenly find their conscience when their money supply is cut off, yeah? So, but that does take organizing, right? It does take mass organizing to be able to build that kind of power. And I think, what's happening right now with Iran, by the way, Iran is actually winning the war, and they will win the war to defend their own homeland. Just letting you know that right now. Don't believe any of the US media propaganda. But in that process, they have also opened up a door for the rest of humanity, indigenous people all over the world that have been under the boot of US oppression for generations to fight, to be able to fight for their own liberation in a really powerful way that I don't think there's been in a really long time. And I'll explain why. One is that over the proxy war with Ukraine, right, in Russia, and then the genocide in Gaza, and now the war with Iran, the US military has expended so much of its material. It's the interceptors, the billions of dollars of interceptors and Iron Dome defense that we give to Israel for free because they're, a base of our empire, of US empire. But all of the Tomahawk missiles, the billion-dollar radar systems and the F-15s and the C-130s that have been blown up by the Iranian military, all of that amounts to not only billions of dollars, but rare earth elements like tungsten and dysprosium and terbium, all these, periodic table rare elements that are really hard to procure, extract, and process. China processes 90% of those rare earth elements. And do you think, given all of the recent developments, that China is going to let the United States use any of those rare earth elements for military applications? They've already actually restricted the US from purchasing any second order rare earths processed for military applications. So what that means is that there might not even be RIMPAC this year. It's an open question. One, because a lot of the Navy is actually stationed in the Indian Ocean or the Arabian Sea, right? And maybe for a while, but also because they might not be able to afford to waste ordnance on practice on war games. What that also means, though, is that the US empire is actually kind of on the back foot. It may not seem like it because, empires are always at their most aggressive, big body, violent, right before they collapse, right? So I think that's what we're seeing right now. That's what we're going to see. And that's going to create, that desperation is also an opportunity for us to capitalize and organize off of. Because a desperate enemy is someone who is much more amenable to negotiation. And one more thing I want to say on this related subject. Today's April 15th, and that is the last day since the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil comes out of. The last supertanker carrying 2 million barrels of oil arrives on the US mainland today. And that is why this global economic collapse that is happening all over Europe, all over Asia, has been delayed for as long as it has. Today it arrives. And there's going to be all these cascading economic effects that happen as a result. That is going to be terrible for us, but it also creates the best argument for Hawaiian sovereignty that there's been in a while, right? Because we always talk about we are, turn from 100% food sustainable to colonization and then now 90% dependent. 2 weeks with no ships coming in, we starve, right? No better argument to return ʻāina, to be able to grow food. And so the more organized we are, the better we can make that argument. Yeah,
I don't want to cut you off, but we got about 5 minutes left. And I had one more thing I wanted to ask you, all of you, because all of you mentioned events, this connection, right? Is that real or are you just imagining it? What do you think?
For me, it's real. Being there, feeling the bombs go off, and knowing that economically, spiritually, physically, the military has created such an impact, and economically that we become victim to their addiction. But I want to go back to one thing. Well, there's many things, but in our mission statement, it's I, Mālama Mākua, Piku of Peace, and ho'eho'e'ea. And with that, we are projecting Mākua as being the Pico of Peace, even though it was a live fire training, unexploded ordnance. But the question that came up for us, specifically me, what does that mean for me? How do I project peace? How do I make peace? In our community, where do men go to find peace? Where do women go to find peace? And for Leandra and I, that was an emotional craziness during our separation. For a male, hard to identify a Wahini's energy. The place she was a Wahini place. I couldn't make that connection. And observing in our life, men have a hard time with emotion. So Mākua has been an emotional place that I'm a Vietnam vet, so coming back, having to deal with, am I a loyal American or am I a loyal Hawaiian? I was able to separate. I'm not anti-American, I'm not anti-military, I'm pro-Hawaiian, pro-ʻāina. Clear definition, I have no problem with that. They're gonna blow us up. This is not, what did they call, what did the governor say? This is not a drill. I took my family to McDonald's and we had breakfast. You're gonna blow us up? We are a target on the Waianae Coast. So yes, we are definitely being impacted by all of this stuff. But I'm hoping that as Mālama Mākua being the Pico of Peace, we'll be able to spread that in a more positive way so we can get out of this craziness of killing people.
Vince, any last words?
Yes. Connection. I mean, Mākua is continually demonstrating that to us. You know, we have built relationships among ourselves and among the Army representatives that we work with on the understanding that we are all connected. We're all connected by ʻāina. Our DNA, all of our DNAs are 100% ʻāina. And what affects ʻāina affects us all, you know. I'm sure that our audience today is well aware of what's happening globally, not only the war in Iran, but climate change. And, you know, the folks that we work with in the Army, the folks that are in government, they know this too. And it's like, we must get our act together to turn this around. Otherwise, maybe human beings are not gonna be here. You know, it's like we have been living unsustainably for a long, long time. And now really is the call to come back to our senses and to work together to build. And that's what Mākua has, for me, really, really consistently directed us to do, is build. Mālama Mākua, we are willing to work together with anybody, any organization to build, to rebuild, to build for a better future. I think as Lynette said near the end of the movie, you know, it's not just about peace in Mākua. It's about peace all over the world. And I think my final thought to everybody is really, you know, we have the power and ability to declare right now that war is finished. There is no more place for war in our world. Now we have a tremendous job to dismantle the war machinery, the machinery of war. But we can do that, and we can do that step by step. We can do that in our homes, in our schools, in our businesses, everywhere where it presents itself. You know, war and the culture of war built on the culture of fear has, you know, penetrated every level of our lives. And we can turn that around. When you realize how well supported we are by ʻāina, right? Everything that we have on today, all the bling, all the technology, all the food we eat, the cars we drive in, the airplanes we ride, everything comes from the ʻāina. She is truly our mother. And so it's like, let us take care of our mother because she has been taking care of us and she will continue to take care of us should we do that. Mahalo.
Yeah, I think it's real, but the only way to find out is to sign up for an access and see for yourself.
Yeah, Mikey.
want to thank all of you for coming today. Thank you for producing the film and great archives of film that you provided, and Vince for your work, your father's work, for being such a visionary, right? That we have Mākua, a chance at saving Mākua today, and so thank you very much. Yeah.
Right. Big mahalo to everybody in our audience and all the support. Mahalo plenty. Much aloha. Yeah. Arigatou gozaimashita from Japan.
I guess we'll do Q&A outside if anyone wants to hang out. Thank you.
Right on.
Right on.
Thank you all.